Next speaker, I'm so excited to be chatting to this person because this brand, I got introduced to this brand last year, and it's just been up and up and up and up and up from there. Please help me welcome Dale Strime. We gotta sanitize it, Dale.
Hey everybody.
We have to sanitize it. How are you doing, Dale?
I'm good, I'm great. I'm excited to be here. Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. It's going to be a hard act to follow Wandile, but okay, that's cool. And let's give it up for Wandile, it was brilliant.
Yeah, he was brilliant. Let me begin by saying Happy Youth Day to you.
I'm pretty old, but thank you. I appreciate it. Happy Youth Day to the young out there.
I think each year the youth number keeps going down. So it's 35, next year it's 36, and then 37,
Yeah, I'm
and then
37,
38.
so I missed it this year anyway, but thank
Still
you.
youth.
Thank you.
Now, Dale, please introduce yourself to our audience. Let them know who you are, because I don't think I can give you a better introduction than the one.
Currently, I'm Dale. Nice to meet you all. I'm the creative lead and head designer for Jonathan D. I'm just in the search of awesomeness. That's kind of really what I'm about. I just want to chase the dream and keep doing what we're doing. That's it. As Wandile said, I'm scared of failure too. So with saying that, that's what I'm all about. Just avoiding the failures and just enjoying the successes and just doing some rad stuff on the way.
Where did it all start for you, Dale?
What, the dream? Or the drive?
The drive, the dream, everything.
The drive started at the age of 6. That's when I kind of remember the first pair of shoes I ever owned. And the joke in my family is that I refused to take the shoes off. I used to sleep in them. I tried to bath in them. I wore them so much that actually my parents had to cut them off when they got too small. So that's when it all started. And then since then, I've always been chasing that feeling of perfection.
Yeah.
As Wandile once again said, he said everything amazingly, so I'm probably going to sound like a parrot here. But when you put on a good item of clothing, you just feel fulfilled. You feel not perfect, you just feel happy. And there's a saying I like to say, and in that moment, I was happy. So I'm always trying to chase that happy feeling. And for me, my drug and my addiction is apparel and clothing. I don't do anything else. I just love the feel of good products. And I'm trying to recreate and keep creating good products so I can feel happy. So I think that's when my drive started at the age of 6. And ever since then, it's been a necessity for me to feel good. And in order to feel good, you've got to look good. That's the old saying, the adage. So yeah, that's when it started.
So when did they finally take the shoes off?
I mean, you know, when you're young, I probably outgrew them in like 4 weeks. But that felt like a lifetime, and the feeling has been with me. So it has been a lifetime. It's been 31 years of that feeling. So for me, every time I design something, it's trying to recreate that moment of feeling fulfilled, feeling like you're a complete person.
Now let's fast forward. You finished matric. Where to from there?
So when I finished matric, this was many years ago, 2002, there wasn't really a fashion scene back then. There was your go-to stores that everyone knows about, which you're not going to mention. And it seemed like a very far-fetched dream to be a fashion designer in South Africa, since there wasn't a way to feel and see brands that you look up to or know of. Even just to find out brands in those days was impossible, just about. So I was lucky enough to take a gap year to London to go just find myself. And then when I went there, I walked into a store called Topshop, which we all know of Topshop. So I walked into Topshop, and that was like walking through the pearly gates. It was like welcoming myself to heaven. When I walked in, I was like, this is amazing. This is what life is about. So I applied for a job there, got rejected. Walked down the road to Gucci's head store in London, handed out my CV, got rejected, and I just figured nothing's going to stop me, so I started applying to every store. And then I landed up at a store called JD Sports, which is like a sports scene. And then I handed my CV, and they said, cool, we're looking for someone to work in the stockroom. You can come work the stockroom. So I was like, great. So my first intro to that was learning how to tie shoelaces up, how they come in a box. So, which I'm pretty proud of. I love that. I learned how to fill shoes and learn how shoes should fit, and then lace them up and learn how to play around with lacing, because surprisingly enough, it's not always laced perfect when it comes out from factories and stuff. So I figured, let me lace it how it should fit on a foot, and that was exciting. That was my first education into the real world of fashion. That lasted, and then I got a phone call from Topshop. Topshop hired me over the phone, which is exciting. But what happened is I ended up working in the stockroom again, but that was great because I learned how women wore clothes. Because I was restocking women's wear. I wanted to be at that stage, I wanted to be in the personal shopping section, which was like the rock and roll dream of Topshop, like, you know, all the celebrities come and you dress celebrities. Yeah. But I was at the very bottom, which was great, which is where you want to start. You want to start at the very, very bottom. Then came back home to South Africa, didn't know how to do business. And what everyone neglects is the art of business.
So you left Topshop?
Yeah, my year was over and I came back to university. So I was only there for 18, when I was 18 to 19. And then I wanted to come home and I wanted to go to university. But I knew I never wanted to be in finance, or I didn't want to be an accountant or a lawyer or a banker. I knew I needed to be in clothing in some way or form. So in order to do that, I knew I needed to learn the art of business, because you don't want to just be a creative because you read about all these horror stories in the biographies you learn and read all the books. You should read more, anybody, anyway. That the creative always gets taken apart because he's not a business person, or his business partner takes them apart. And for me, I thought it was very neglectful to neglect that part of the business. So I tried my best to understand the art of business. I did a finance and marketing degree, but whilst I was doing that, I was still hustling on the side, starting little brands, doing some form of apparel or merchandise. I was also in a band, so I was always used to design the band merch and learning how to sell band merch and learning customers' reaction to products. So like, you think you can design a cool t-shirt, but no one's going to love it, and then you only learn that when you start selling it. So that's the story. I'll skip around all the boring parts of varsity and everything, and then I was lucky enough on a holiday that I saw a brand that I really thought was a gap in the market, which is the important word, is the gap in the market. Actually, Dean's cousin, a business partner of mine at those days, we brought the brand in, and then we learned how to interact with companies, because you're selling a brand now. All along realizing that as much as you love product, I love design, and I want to design, not just sell product. And then trying to skip the boring parts, to be honest.
We want to hear it. I think it's so important.
It's 37 years of this. I'm just trying to get through it all. So, in essence, Dean and I started a brand. When I'm a really first brand that incorporated South Africa in a vision that wasn't South African but international, but was the proud heritage of South Africa. Which is what we've always wanted to do. I was seeing a lot of South African brands, but they was always pushing the same narrative. It was always, I don't want to sound disrespectful or anything, I always found it was like a shweshwe brand, or using this type of cloth brand, or it's like, but we shouldn't be pigeonholed as that. We have so much skill and amazing, and as South Africans, we're brilliant with color schemes and how to mix and match patterns, that I always wanted to design a South African brand that looked international but was South African. So that was Sweet and Crow, where we started incorporating, as if this is an objective view, incorporating international flavors and telling a story of the South African brand. That did amazingly. Then we went our ways and did 2 excellent brands also. And then being able to market a story is where I ended up with Jonathan D. Because staying true to your story, the bosses of Jonathan D said, why don't you come, let's re-engineer a South African brand again, Jonathan D, but in the way that you want to tell the good heritage story and not what it's being told. And that's where we are today, doing that. And that's where I think the exciting part to talk about with everybody. We'll open up, I think, questions to everybody, because that's probably more exciting. And that's where we are, yeah.
And now Jonathan D is one of the brands that I think is at the forefront of street culture and conversations. When you joined the brand, what was your objective? And right now, what is your objective?
So when I met them, they told us that Jonathan D was one of the first South African brands that was doing menswear.
Yes.
It started in 1978. Yeah, got that correct. And what happened was that brand it didn't grow its customer base, it grew with its customer base. So when a customer was 30, they designed for 30-year-olds. And that gentleman became 35, they designed for 35-year-olds. So they lost their story because they were following a customer and not telling a story. So my objective was to go back to what Jonathan D was about. It was a really aspirational gentleman's brand. My objective, I wanted to make it youthful, I wanted to make it unisex, and I wanted to bring it back to the youth and deal with what clothing was back in the 50s and the 60s, which was highly based around fit and fabric. I wanted to avoid the fast fashion and do everything that all these fast fashion retailers are doing. I'd rather wanted to get people to fall in love with product again, and by spending time designing, hand-picking fabrics, building our own patterns, focusing on the detail more than just, oh, well, this is in trend, let's do that. So that was my objective, and my current objective still is that, and we're even further enhancing it by not following trend. We see where trend is going, and we want to go our own way and do our own patterns and do our own styling and our own product. We do our own color palettes. So that's our objective. We want to keep the narrative of that Jonathan D is a South African brand told in an international flavor, but a purely heritage to South Africa.
And you guys, I think, have done that so well, because for a long time, Jonathan D in South Africa was not a brand that I, as a 23-year-old, could walk into a store and buy.
Exactly.
But now, I can walk into a store and see a Jonathan D product and really want to purchase it. And I think that I speak for every young person who's here. It has become a brand that has really, really signified and is telling a story of young people in South Africa right now.
Thank you very much. Well, as I said, we want people to fall in love with product again. The problem today, which is, again, objective, I found there's too much hype around certain products that people are forgetting the core basics of what product should be. You want to feel good, you want to wear what you want to wear, you want to tell your story. You don't want to just look like another hype kid that is buying into hype because Travis Scott told you this is what you need to wear. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not knocking that. That has its own element of business for everybody. I just think growing up where there wasn't much option, as I said, I had to fall in love with product to understand product. I had to hold an item of clothing to actually understand it. And I think I would love people to start learning that again. The artistry, shall I say, in creating product and feeling good in product and learning how to style it in your own way. With today, with the world being so small as it is, everyone's starting to kind of look similar. I'm hoping, we're trying to give someone a platform to style it your own way. We make formal shoes in the end of the day, and it's been worn in street culture, it's been worn with shorts, it's been worn with skirts, it's been worn with denim, it's been worn with skinny denims over whatever, shorts over this. It's like, just style it your own way. The product is built correctly that you can wear it with anything because you spent the time to understand and learn product. That we can't understand that no one wants to look the same, everyone wants to look individual, but wear the same product individually. So that was important for us, sorry.
Now, Dale, remember the two questions that I asked at the beginning? Please keep them in mind. Finally, Dale, I forgot to ask you, where are you from and how has that place inspired what you currently do now?
So I was born and raised in Joburg. I grew up, as I said, idolizing fashion and music. Those are the two cultures for me that really enhanced my growth. I grew up listening to punk music on the one side and hip-hop on the other side, and I believe the two worlds are the same in theory. At a stage they were different, but now they're kind of warped to the same. I love the punk mentality of not taking no for an answer and sticking it to the man and doing what you need to do for your own right. And then hip-hop's early days it was also like an FU to the man. It's like, this is the music we want to play, this is our culture, this is what we're about. So I love the two worlds, and I grew up enjoying the two worlds. And for me, it inspired me to try recreate the two worlds to become one. So that's just generally where my whole inspiration for everything has come from.
Now, you're a creative director. Before I let you go, I want to ask you, what does the face, or rather the future of fashion in our country look like?
So it's looking good. To be honest, it's looking a lot better than it did. It really did. At a stage, it was bleak where I also stepped out of the industry for a while because it looked very grim and bleak, and everything started looking washed out, and it just felt like there was no inspiration, and everyone was just trying to do stuff for the gram, and let me do this because this is what I want to be seen doing. And I feel like that's the worst form of inspiration you can. You want to do something so someone else will like it for you. And for me, that wasn't really doing any creatively great stuff for the country. But now I feel like because there is so much happening, and we're all glued to our phones. There's two people, they're glued to their phones now, which is great. I feel like you're being forced to be creative, and I feel like people are getting bored, which is you want. I believe in boredom is when real creativity is done. You're like forced to think. And looking at what's happening and seeing some of the brands that are coming out, you can see that there's a new revival of inspiration happening. And I hope the youth can take that inspiration and just build on it and not worry about how many likes you're going to get or what someone else is going to think of you. Would rather say, I love wearing pink and I love wearing a skirt and I love wearing shorts and I'm a male and I'm going to do it. Great, do it. That's what it'd be here for. Don't worry that no one else is doing it, because you don't want to look like anyone else. You want to look like you. And in order to do something that's going to change the world, you've got to be you, because in the end of the day, people invest in you and not the thoughts that people think of you.
And guys, it's okay to be different, hey?
It's important to be different, not okay.
It's very important.
To be different.
Yeah, we all don't want to come out there and you ask someone, we all like, our favorite color is green, we all like a pair of jeans, and we all like a pair of shorts.
And I think it's great if everyone loves green. If the green's the season, that's great, but how are you going to wear your green? Like, don't be forced because person Z, who has 1.7 billion followers, says, oh, I'll wear it like this. Great, that's their story and we're all following them, that's cool. But I want to invest in a person. And I think for us for you guys as youth, it's important to realize that the only way to build something that's going to be sustainable and really solid is your story. And your way of telling your story. Even Wandile, he stuck to his story, and that's why he is where he is, because it's his story, and the millions of followers and the lots of people who are going to follow him no matter what he does next, because we believe in him and trust him. But if he had to do what every other store did, and if I did what every other brand did, we just washed out. No one's going to follow us. They're going to follow us for the 15 minutes of fame we have, because that's clout. You don't want clout. And don't worry about clout. Clout is something for now. I mean, in 2 years, clout's probably not going to be a word, or maybe it will, but do your own story. Time up.
Dale, you asked.
Sorry.
They agree with what you're saying.
I once did comedy and they put the red light and they told me to get off, so I figured that was it.
Okay, Dale, before I let you go, you asked Wandile such an important question, that what was his greatest success and what was his greatest failure? For you, same question.
So, I think my greatest success today is realizing there's no such thing as a failure, it's a learning lesson, and it takes maturity and humility to realize that. Realize everyone makes mistakes and everyone fails, and you can't beat yourself up on failures, because trust me, I've made millions of failures, tons of failures, and if you sit there and focus on your failures, you're just going to live in your highlight reel and just be too scared to go forward. So, my greatest success, besides being able to do what I do every day as a living, is also that I've realized I don't really give a fuck what everyone thinks. I just want to keep doing my story and do my own thing. So nothing is a failure, it's just a learning lesson, and everyone needs to appreciate that and just take it in. And also don't forget, losers worry about winners and winners worry about winning. So that's what you got to do.
Okay, Dale, we don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to open it to the floor. We're only going to take 2 questions. So if you do have a question for Dale, please raise your hand. We have a question there at the back.
Thank you.
Keep it short, question. We spoke a lot about individualism. How does being an individual in a culture affect the brand?
Oh, that's deep.
That's a deep one, Dale.
Well, once again, I think it boils down to your story as an individual. And obviously, once you have the correct story and a story that's meant to be told, or told in the correct way, well, then every story is meant to be told. I think everyone has a good story to tell. But a story that is solid and it's true and honest, you will influence culture. And you'll get a following, because there's more than one person that needs to tell or likes your story. That's just kind of a herd mentality. There is someone else that's going to enjoy what you enjoy.
Yeah.
And if you're honest to yourself and the story, and stay true to that story, you will influence culture and will be able to build a culture around it. I mean, if you look at, once again, referring the first punk bands, there was no punk in those days. And if that first punk band didn't play that fast music, there would be no culture. If the first hip-hop artist didn't pick up the mic and say a few words, there wouldn't be hip-hop. And that's their story within a culture. So I think for me, to answer that is like just be true and honest to the individual story and not make it an individual story, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, do you have one more question? We have one more question. What's your question for Dale?
When you spoke about like communicating a brand, like how do you know at the beginning if you're like communicating it properly through to the other people? Because there's no such thing as like being able to measure it, right? If I can say. I'm saying like as you begin to communicate a brand out to people as you're starting out, how do you know if you're doing it correctly? Because there's no such thing as like being able to measure it. There's not enough data.
I guess you know you're doing something right when people are actually buying your product and wearing it in their own way, or actually sending you stuff that how they're wearing it and communicating back to how they've done it or why they've done it. So you can't be in love with the beginning part of the story also as a storyteller. You've got to evolve your story too, and as I said, you've got to find your core basics and stick to it. But the true measure of if you're doing it correctly is if you're being able to carry on doing it. That's it, and not losing the main focus of it. So in order to tell the story, you've got to figure out what your story is. If your story is just to make product, that means you've got to carry on making product. And I guess the measure of success there, or the measure that you're doing it, is if you continue to make the story. But if your story is, I want to make $1 gazillion overnight, and you don't do it, then your story isn't being measurable or being understood by anybody. So the basis is, as long as you carry on telling your story and being able to evolve your story, it's being measurable and you being able to be successful within it.
Thank you so much, Dale.
Thank you. This has been great. Thank you, everybody.
I was going to say, Dale, shout out to you, and a big shout out to you and the people that you work with at Jonathan D for making a brand like Jonathan D, like for turning it around. A lot of brands can't do that now. Now there's a lot of people, young people, even younger people, who are so interested in buying and looking good in a Jonathan D
Thank
product.
you. Just to end off, sorry, I don't want to sound preachy, but I think it's going to sound preachy, but I have to. It's good. On Youth Day, I think when Dele said it earlier, it's that being youth is very hard at the moment, but there's so much potential for everybody. You just got to know your worth, and you got to humble yourself. But also surround yourself with people you respect and you can learn from. And don't chase the paycheck in the beginning, but know your worth, but learn. Just learn from whoever you want to learn, and learn from the bottom, because as I said, I started at the very bottom packing boxes, and then that's the only way I was able to learn apparel and learn stuff. So humble yourself in that you have to know everything in order to be successful in it, but know your worth and learn.
Know your
Thank you guys. You guys did great. Thank you very
Shout
much.
out to you, Dale.